everybody. We're doing another live episode here when we're on the couch with Tim Doyle. Had the pleasure of meeting Tim last year, I think so, at TEDx Waikato in the early days of creating Seed back when we were Waikato young professionals. We managed to get hands on a couple of tickets and Tim won those with Luke Taylor from episode 3 and met him there, and then going full circle back to see their second instalment. Tim came along, sitting at the same table, and caught up again, and since then we've had a couple of coffees and we're sitting down with a coffee here today. So yeah, Tim, what do you got planned this weekend, mate? What are you up to?
Oh, not too much. We had our Christmas work party last night, which is nice and relaxing, just a barbecue, and then just heading over to the mount to clean the car this morning. And
nice. How often do you clean your car? I've got a Hilux and never do that.
Not that often, maybe once every couple of weeks or something like that.
Yeah.
So,
what's the plans over in the mount?
Oh, hopefully just to climb up the mount with some friends and then go for a swim or something like that. Beautiful day outside, so make the most of it.
It's awesome. With a few of those thunderstorms are banking up again, it looks, so another exciting day ahead, I'd say.
Yep.
So who's Tim Doyle today?
Today? Well, I'm a chartered accountant and director at AgBiz Accountants with my business partner, Jane Evans. Mostly retired sportsman. Did the Ironman back in March, and it was a real personal achievement. It's great to tick off the list. Love a bit of world traveller. Definitely got a couple of trips lined up for next year already, and done a lot of exploring around the world in the past year. That sort of sums me up, I think.
Nice. So there's pretty places we can go there. We'll start with the Ironman. I ran 12 Ks 2 weeks ago and thought I was going to die. How do you run a half marathon or a marathon after you've biked and swam for so long? How did you get to that point?
You trust me, if I tried to run 12k at the moment, I would have a heart attack or something, especially in this heat.
Yeah.
I guess the Ironman itself, like the actual event, isn't. It's great, and that's when obviously your friends, your family are there, and you get a great chance to show what you've been putting your life into, really. But it's really a 6-month campaign, or sort of at least a 4 to 6 month campaign, and all the hard work's done during the road, and the Ironman's just really the tick at the end of the box. All the hard work's done in that campaign, and it's all of the sacrifices that you make and the trainings that you make, and of course the Ironman in New Zealand's in March, so it's normally over that Christmas New Year period where everyone's off partying and relaxing. I remember Christmas Day, I got up at 5 o'clock and rode 180k or 6 hours on my bike, and then did the same on New Year's Day a week later. So when you've done the training and you've got the right team in terms of coach and also a really good support network, family, friends, the people that you live with, the people that you train with, and you kind of get into this bubble a little bit. And when you're doing the training, you're definitely like focused on the end goal, and you kind of get in that narrow focus and sort of switch off. So I had a training program. It's on a training software called Training Peaks, and you have these green boxes once you do them. So being a little bit OCD, I try and get as many green boxes along the way as I could, and you just sort of wake up, okay, this is what I've got to do today, and off you do it. And again, with some good structure around a program, you can start off running half an hour, then the next week might be 45 minutes, and before you know it, you're running 2 hours on a Wednesday morning before work and running 26k, and then it just sort of happens. And I guess like anything, the gradual consistency is totally underrated. Yeah. And the more that you can do something consistently, it's really beneficial, and that's part of the process of really doing an Ironman.
So you said online programming coach. Were those two connected, or? Yeah.
So when I was doing it last year, I had a coach in Hamilton, Russell Smith. He was fantastic, and he would give me my programs and load them into the Training Peaks software with the descriptions, and then we'd catch up maybe once a month or at events or something like that, and email support and stuff.
So what are the key focuses for each training? Is it all about endurance, or did you go for a little bit of speed work as well, or something that long is just
not really? I guess like each coach has a different philosophy, and having worked with Simon Cochran as well, his sessions were a really great change up and quite specific and quite give you specific targets and paces to reach in each session. So, yeah, again, completely different coaching philosophies, and they work for different people. Whereas the program that I was under at the time was quite long and steady. So I'd go out for, say it was a 2-hour run. I'd just be having a heart rate to hit, and I'd have maybe 10, 15 minutes warm up, and then the bulk of the session in this particular heart rate. Whereas other coaches, or it was some of Simon's programs that I did it as well, just they were more 5K at this pace, 1 minute walk, 5K at this pace. But again, like everyone's different. Depends on what you're training for. It depends on the time of where you are in the season and that kind of thing as well. So yeah.
Nice. Now, swimming, running, and cycling on their own are quite technical.
Yeah.
How much did you focus on technique, or what sort of basis? What sort of basis did you have to go and implement the three together?
I guess from swimming since I was a young fella and swimming competitively, the swimming was the easiest and already there. And I think that I was quite lucky because that's what most people find the hardest. Whereas I can jump in and swim quite comfortably, and that was never going to be an issue. It was more of how fresh are we going to be at the end of the swim. Cycling and running technique, one foot in front of the other, or just make the pedals go around. I just did the cycle on a road bike with some clip-on like hero bars where people would have some of the bikes and the transitions were worth upwards of $10,000 to $20,000, and I was just looking around going, wow, like here's my $1,000 job, just doing the thing. So I don't think there's much technique in the actual doing it.
And what did you learn if you were going to do it again? What would you do differently, if anything?
Good question. Don't take Voltaren before the race.
What did that do?
It just gave me a really upset stomach during the later half of the run, and got me quite dehydrated as well, which wasn't nice the next day or during the race, especially when you've put so much time and effort and commitment and sacrifice into it. To have something like that go wrong, it's frustrating, but that's what makes it an Ironman at the end of the day, and makes it quite tough in the first place. What else did I learn? Enjoy it along the way, and the people that you meet, and especially in Hamilton and the Waikato, there's such an awesome community of triathletes and people, and it's really motivating and inspiring to be involved in that, and also to see other people's journeys as well, and just a really great bunch of people, and just really enjoy that. Other things I learned, just really enjoy it. Maybe keep a bit more of a broader perspective as well, and don't get so narrow focused in. Life's still going to go on and continue, and it's easy to switch off to those other things. That's a couple of key takeaways.
Are you someone who strives to win, or how did you temper that with your first Ironman?
I knew I was never going to win it. Put it that way. But again, when you're training 15 hours a week, you kind of always think in the back of your mind that, Jesus, why am I doing this? So I'd be like, I knew reality I was never going to win, but I wanted to be competitive. I knew I was going to be competitive on the swim, obviously, but with the swim only being 45, 50 minutes of a 10, 12-hour race, it's quite small, and you really need to be a cyclist and a runner. And the reality is I'm too big and too heavy to do that. But of course, I just really wanted to do the best that I could, and see what I'm capable of doing, really.
Awesome. And so it's a long period of time. How long did it take you?
To be honest, I can't remember. I think it was either 11:45 or 12:45. It was one or the other. I think,
Regardless, it's a whole day. How do you fuel a big engine for that long?
The swim was fine, and I remember it was actually really choppy, which, again, I didn't mind coming from that swimming background. So I really enjoyed the swim, and then there's actually, if you go to Taupo, there's quite a long run from when you jump out of the water to up the top and jump into the bike transition, and there's just people all lined up along this little green carpet, and it's fantastic. You're just seeing your friends, you're running along, you've got a big smile on your face, and off you go. And the bike wasn't too bad. I'd done probably 4 or 5 6-hour rides to prepare myself. So, and it came right in on time. I think it was 6:05, and I got a 5-minute penalty, which was a bit frustrating. But and then it's
what was that for? Drafting.
So the wind was just terrible. It was really strong, tough conditions. And of course, being a swimmer, You're first out, and then everyone's just going past you, and everyone's just flying past you. And then, but coming back in on the headwind, people would be flying past you, but then you'd pull in front of you, and then because of the wind was so strong, you wouldn't be dropping back. You kind of just stay there. So I think in one situation, not having much race experience and trying to judge distances, I just got pinged for staying too close for too long of a time, whereas I should have dropped back. But because of the wind, I was just riding at the same intensity. I didn't, thinking that the person who passed me would continue to just run on. So,
And then, obviously then probably going past you, having done some limited cycling, getting past you, they'd then be struck with the wind and their pace would slow down slightly and you'd be stuck in their pocket. But how far did you have to be away? Can you remember? No, that's
10
right.
10 or 12 metres.
Oh, right. Significant.
But I remember, like, normally for training rides, we'd be sitting on, not fast as Tony Dodds or something like that, but somewhere around 28 to sort of 30k an hour average. Yeah. And this is during the race, and we were going 22, 24 into this really strong headwind. So one way we were obviously, on the turnout, we were going 40, 45, and you're going along, and you're just going, yeah, this is awesome, I'm loving it. And then on the way back, you're like, oh man, this is really hard work. So
what were you monitoring during the race? Obviously you had
heart rate. Heart rate was the biggest one because again, that's how all my training was focused, hitting on specific heart rate zones. So I knew if I maintained that zone, I wasn't going to blow up. On the bike, I think 150 was the target, even around 140. And then on the run, no higher than 160.
Right.
And but I crashed and burned and walked off of it.
That was when I was with Dr. Seed. That was one of the things he sort of was talking to me about was your energy use. If you're pushing past that sort of 150, 160, how you start going glycolytic. And the more you side topic, the more you sort of adrenal fatigue, the lower that number is. And so, when you've only got a certain amount of muscle glycogen, you gotta crash. It's cool to hear that you're following the heart rate along.
And well, obviously with the bulletproof coffee, you're right into the low carb, high fat thing as well. And that's definitely something that I was trying to, and just eating lots of fat to try and get that fuel source for the longer endurance, sustainable energy sources as well.
So when did the gut problem hit you on the run?
Probably around about the 20k halfway mark. I think I ran the first half in about maybe just under 155. And then the second half was 2.5 hours or something like that. And I remember the total run time was 4:40. And I wanted to get that under 4, so that was the one sort of disappointing thing.
And so you've trained and worked with high fat. What are you doing in the race to top up your energy? The thing that I was doing during the race was that whole concept of trying to be metabolic flexible, so that when you take carbs, that you could utilise the carbs as glycogen, and therefore they'd add an extra energy on top of that baseline of already having the fat as the fuel. So And what forms were you doing that?
So just like gels and bars and bananas and sports drinks and electrolytes and that kind of stuff.
And high glycemic, slow release, or whatever.
Just the Cliff bars. And I think that was the main things. But everyone's individualised and trying to find out what works for you and that kind of thing as well.
And so were you getting Cliff bars in New Zealand, or did you order those?
I'm sure they were Cliff bars. They might have been something else. They were. It's been that long ago. I haven't done anything since. So.
I have, funnily enough, seen them in Pack and Save and Mill Street. So
they've got a really nice white chocolate macadamia nut in the
Beautiful. And so, what was a typical day looking like in that 6 months? You were still working?
So I was still working. I just came back. So I came back from overseas in July, and then signed up to do the Ironman. And then sort of from maybe October, I think I bought my bike. So I was really lucky. I've got a great team at work, and as an employee back then had a great boss. Still it's great to work with a great boss, Jane. And so I normally wake up somewhere around 4:45, swim 3 or 4 times a week for an hour and a half, and go to work, or run or ride. And then I be fortunate enough to be able to leave work at around 3:34 and jump on my bike for 2 hours.
Nice.
And so sort of been done by training around 6:30. And at the time I was living on a farm in Matamata, which is about half an hour from here in Cambridge. So I'd be home at 7:30 and then dinner and then normally bed like 8:39 sort of thing. Just because you just.
Was there breakfast before your morning session?
No, so I was trying to. So since about the age of since I left home really, just never used to swim. I never used to eat before swim training in the morning, and I've normally been okay with that. Been a few maybe bigger pool sessions like sort of above 7, 8, 9k that you'd maybe have a banana or a few jelly beans on the side of the pool deck just to get you through, but normally pretty good. Up to 2 hours of burning fuel.
Yeah, no, it's funny looking back on my swimming days. I used to try and force down like a honey sandwich. Occasionally I'd be lucky enough to have a banana, and I just I remember because there's a group of us in the neighbourhood we lived in, and so we take turns. But I remember being out at the gate and just sort of gagging on the food that I was trying to eat. And now I've found the beauty of a banana with peanut butter on it, and I'm just like, wish I'd known that back then. And it was always funny. I'd get to about the hour point of swimming, and I'd burp and
taste it all over.
Taste it all over again. But for me, in my head, that'd be all right. Your body's needing that energy now, and we're into that energy now. And when you're in winter training and you're doing 4 to 6k sessions, that was like, right, we're powering on now.
I think when we caught up with Paddock, we were like, when we were 15, 16, just used to wake up, have 5 or 6 Weet-Bix, come home, have another 8 Weet-Bix and 4 bits of toast, go off to lunch, go off to school, have your whole lunch at morning tea, and then have another lunch at lunch. Come home, a couple of packets of 2-minute noodles, go to swimming training, come back, dinner, and then finish with Weet-Bix again for dessert.
and you probably, you look at your parents and you look at your food bills now, and you kind of think, how did they do it? And that's probably why the option was always there's plenty of bread in the freezer.
That as well. Bread and butter. There you go.
No. So, how far did you take swimming? I've spoken about it a couple of times. I got to 15 and thought, nationals made the top 10, but 8-lane pool. So, it was no good. And when you got swimmers from Japan and New South Wales and stuff coming in, taking your spot, it got pretty disheartening. And when you play water polo, it's a whole much more fun with your mates as opposed to staring at a black line. How long did you take the swimming, mate?
Going back a few years now. So I went to junior nationals and NAGs, it was called back then. I remember the first time being down in Christchurch, which was pretty cool. And this was the days that if you qualified in one race, you could still swim in 2 others. So I think I made 3 finals as a 12 or 13-year-old back then.
At juniors or NAGs?
Yeah, NAGs, National Age Groups. And then it changed to youth and opens. So I think those 15, 16, 17-year-olds had combined with opens and swam there. And mostly it was a breaststroker and I think maybe 1 or 2 400 frees as well. But then, like anyone, you sort of leave school and sort of come to university, and your training sort of goes down. And so all through youth and opens, I made finals. Never medalled, only medalled in a couple of Taranaki relay teams, which was pretty cool. And then started swimming back up in here in Hamilton. And again, life gets in the way of it. But had a couple of cracks and went to Opens again in 2008, which was the Beijing trials. And made the semis in that. And then I think I pulled out of the final to I just knew I was the reality was that there's a guy called Glenn Snyders, and he goes close to a minute, and here I am up around a minute 7 or 8, and it's just you're not going to make, but you kind of knew that before you.
For 100 breast, close to 1 minute cheapest.
I think he's since gone under that. So, and then sort of had another crack at swimming before I went away to overseas, but again, just the reality of it that you're just so far behind, and it's just. There's such a big difference between those really top elite Olympic athletes and just the next step down. That gap is just huge. I don't know what it is, but the gap is just massive.
You were probably pipped out of the medals by a man that I chased all my life, and that same year I qualified for nationals. I was beating him at Southland Champs, then all of a sudden I got to nationals, and he basically medalled in everything. And so you probably took my place. Took my place. Were you in the 200 breast?
Yeah.
Yeah, you took my place in that class. I was ninth on the list.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So I was like, T-Lane probably would have been there, but no, 400 IM, so that was at West Auckland.
Ouch.
Yeah, no, 400 IM was sore. And 200 fly, I don't know why.
Oh, even worse.
Cool. So, what did the travelling involve for me?
Oh, yeah, so I finished my Chartered Accountant exam in 2014 and did a bit of swimming, and then I was like, right, I'm out here. And so left New Zealand in May 2015. And having swam or renovated houses or been studying or working that whole time, it's really the first time to kind of let my hair down and sort of just live a bit of life, really, like with no other commitments. You don't really have to be anywhere. I was lucky enough that I had enough money to support me and not work for as long as really what I wanted to an interim. So yeah, went to Thailand, just got a one-way ticket to Bangkok, and started there and just followed my nose for a couple of months, and then all around Southeast Asia. So yeah, Laos, didn't go to Vietnam on that trip, but Myanmar, back down to Bali, Philippines, Malaysia, and ended up back in the south of Thailand on a tropical island in paradise called Koh Tao, and ended up staying there for 4 months teaching a bit of scuba diving, which was just unreal. And then sort of didn't necessarily get bored of that, but you weren't necessarily getting ahead. You're sort of living paycheck to paycheck. Didn't really mind me because I had some savings built up, but still there's other things in life I kind of wanted to do, and I had my UK visa, and the whole idea was that I was going to go to the UK and work and live in London. Mm-hmm. So probably spent a little bit longer than what I anticipated in Asia in the first place, but then got to London and stopped in Amsterdam on the way for a week, and then got to London on Rugby World Cup final day.
Nice, so 2015. How was that?
I got violently ill and jet lagged.
Yeah.
It was good though. Yeah. And then, but the hostels hostels all around Europe are so different from the hostels in Asia.
Yeah.
So just different people, different vibe. And then arrived in London on Rugby World Cup final day at 10 o'clock in the morning. Met a couple of awesome mates that I knew from back home over there, and we just had a blast.
And you'd recovered.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
So what was the vibe? Rugby World Cup day. Was it noticeable, or was it?
It was massive.
It was noticeable. Yeah.
So I remember getting off at I think Clapham Junction tube station and had no idea. Had Google Maps, but had no idea which way to go and which way the bus was going and all that. So I met my mate Mark Johnson at his flat, and then we went along to Richmond Park, and there's probably about 6,000 Kiwis and Aussies there, probably about 5,000 Kiwis. And
didn't get charged by any deer while you were there.
There's a few floating around there. Yeah. And they had this massive fan zone, and it was just absolutely unreal. And then on Monday I started looking for a job in London.
This was a Sunday, right?
Yeah. Sleeping on my mate's couch, literally. And by Friday I had a job, and then Saturday went and sorted myself a flat closer to where I worked. So. And then, I guess the rest is kind of history. I had a job there for 9 months working in a FTSE 250 company as a commercial finance manager. Yeah. Managed plenty of travel all around Europe while you're there, as most people do. And, it was pretty awesome.
Nice. Yeah. So you said renovating some houses. What was the story there? When did you first get there on the housing market?
Yeah. So I think I bought my first house when I moved in on settlement day. It was on my 21st birthday. Mm-hmm. So at the time I was in a relationship and had and we were renting. Mm-hmm. I think we were paying $310 a week rent for a 2-bedroom place in Hamilton, which is now probably $500 a week. Mm-hmm. But this was going back, so when I was 21, 9 years ago, and you could buy. I think the first house we bought, we paid $227,000 for, which was. At the time back then, you're still thinking, and house prices have gone up, and you're like, Jesus, the house price is going to keep going up. And you're like, wow. But based back at the time then, it was the mortgage repayments were actually maybe like $10 a week more than what we were paying in rent. So again, from my mind, it was just made common sense to pay off the mortgage than to pay rent, because they were both pretty much of a muchness. But at the end of the day, you had an asset that was likely to go up in value. And also
10% deposit was it as well?
I had like maybe $5,000 or $10,000 cash that I put in, not 5 or 10%.
Yeah.
But during my time studying, I got the full amount of student loan.
Right. Yes.
I was still working, so
Yes.
I got the full amount, which was only about $180 a week. And yes, I'm still repaying it now, albeit at interest free.
Yeah.
But I put that money aside or invested it into the share market, all that kind of stuff as well. So after 3 years of study, I kind of had all this money that was effectively my student loan, interest free from the government, but I had it sitting in cash, so I used that money to then pay for the deposit.
What were you working in?
I was working at Smith Sports Shoes. So I worked there for 3 years while I was doing my undergrad, which was sport and exercise science. And that's really, the owner there was fantastic as a businessman to understand mostly about business, and that's kind of what got me into some of the importing stuff that I've done, and then into the accounting side of things as well. So he was buying shoes in from the supplier for $50, and then I'd be selling them out on the shop floor for $200, getting paid minimum wage. And effectively, that's how all retail kind of businesses work.
That's right.
So that's kind of what got me into the importing and distribution side of things too.
Cool. And before we move forward down the business part, the second point that you said about in Thailand was teaching diving.
Yeah.
Tell us how you became a diving instructor, and how did you end up at the Navy?
So I left school, I think, in the first or second week of my 7th form year. So I didn't finish. I did 1 or 2 weeks, one swimming sports.
and why was that as well?
I can't remember at the time, but I think it was something about just thinking that you're 10 foot tall and bulletproof, really. Yeah. Which of course I'm not. I probably learned that the hard way.
6 and a bit. You're not sure.
But there was just something that appealing, maybe around the discipline side of things, having some structure and that kind of thing. So, and of course, I love the water, love the beach, grew up with the beach and swimming and all that kind of stuff. So, I can't remember the exact motive of wanting to join the Navy, but ended up there and did the 3 months basic training, 3 months seamanship course, and then you join as a diver and then started on the diving thing, and it was bloody hard. Yeah, it was. Yes, maybe I was young and a bit immature mentally, and just not mentally tough enough as a 17-year-old as well. But I think it learned a lot, and that's what my first sort of real taste of diving was. Didn't do a hell of a lot because I pretty much left after a few injuries and would have to wait like a whole another year to do the course again. Right. But even then, I don't know if I would have enjoyed it just because I wasn't mentally up to it.
And that's quite interesting because swimming. Talk about the black line fever. You've got to be there. You've got to get up. Yeah. You've then got to go about your day feeling knackered and then come back in the afternoon and do it all again. Yeah. It's quite a mental challenge, and probably one of my best mental lessons was being absolutely completely fatigued and having to finish the set on a swim camp. What was different about being in that organisation? You've proven to yourself that you can do a lot physically and get there, and it's just so disciplined. And what was it?
Probably like a number of things. One was the sleep. Again, like as a 17-year-old, there would go like it doesn't sound like much, but I was like still growing and developing as a 17-year-old, and I needed like a lot of sleep as well. And of course, like there were guys that were our age now that basically you weren't necessarily competing with them, but you were doing the same kind of job that they were doing. And I think the mental maturity from a 17-year-old to a 20 or even like a 24-year-old is quite a big step up.
Still nothing up front.
So that mental maturity, the sleep, and just the realization that maybe you're gonna like this is your job, like getting paid for this. It's actually bloody hard work. Like maybe there's easy ways to make money and that kind of thing as well. And just completely different change of lifestyle too. Like first time leaving home, like went straight from living at home to effectively flatting or like being involved in the military in a very strict and routine and that kind of stuff. So I think those were the biggest sort of factors, but at the same time, I think they set me up quite nicely for them when I went to university, living in the halls for the first year, or just having that sort of independence and looking after yourself, I think it was like it definitely made a huge difference and just made me sort of grow up quite fast.
Right.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I talked about with Ben Logan was that we lack tribal mentality in society today, and so especially when you, like you say, you go to the halls at 17 or 18, and your mentor is someone who's 19.
Yeah.
And you're there with can be up to for example Unipole in Dunedin. You can be there with 1,000 18-year-olds, and it's no wonder that manicness ensues. And
then like mix with like alcohol and people away from the first from home for the first time. That's why it's pretty crazy.
And so in the Navy we've got mentors. I had some friends that were leaders in the Navy with us till sort of 22 and stuff. But then you've got higher rank people who are older and sort of are they there to mentor you, or are they there to knock you down?
I think there's definitely some good people there to mentor you. To be mentors. I think the dive team's a little bit different from some of the other military general sort of ranks and different trades and that kind of thing as well. The dive team, when I was there, and it has since changed, was quite exclusive, and it was very competitive, and it was like the guys were just so tough and so strong, and quite a few of them were involved in like the SAS and that kind of stuff as well. I remember there was one day we were still running around the dive base with our, we still had like full kit on with it's pretty much everything that you go diving in, so weight belt, cylinder, and holding your fins in wetsuit, and you're running around dive base at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and every 500 metres you have to drop down and do 20 press-ups. It was just crazy. Yeah. And then I remember one day we were doing this, and one guy came. We saw probably like one guy who had been out walking the whole night with a backpack on, and he was training for like the SA selection board, and you just knew that these guys were just on a completely, they just had something else that made them tick that I didn't have in those circumstances. I don't know what it was, but you've got to be quite special, or you just got to have such a huge intrinsic drive and hunger to do what they're doing.
Being in the military, what's sort of the focus there? Are you feeling that, hey, we could be called into action, or is it no?
It's great for like meeting some awesome mates and team building, and because you spend such a big amount of time with the same people in such a like a confined space as well. So you find out what people are like instantly. It's a bit like traveling as well. When you can walk into a hostel in Thailand, you can meet someone, and you spend such a big amount of time with them over such a short space. So you might spend 24 hours together over a 24-hour period. You kind of get to know them a lot better than, say, spending an hour with someone over the course of like a normal kind of friendship, I guess, would develop. So you get to know people straight away. So it's the vibe again was very different in basic training to seamanship to the actual dive training as well. So it was very different depending on where you were, but there was never really that urgency about you preparing to go to war or anything like that. It was more about, but again, this is going back like 12 years, and the Navy has different roles. Like for example, the dive team's involved with the police rescue diving, body recoveries, underwater bomb disposals, and that kind of stuff as well. So it's very different from just war, I guess, and that kind of gruesome stuff and that kind of thing too.
Yeah, and so you said it caused you to grow up quite quickly. How did that then, when you got to uni and in the halls? I know my first semester was a bit of not a complete disaster, but in terms of my overall goal, it put me on the back foot and meant that I had to get another couple of years experience down at Otago before I got into optometry. How did it, having had that year or 6 months or so with the Navy, how did that prepare you for getting into the halls?
Yeah, I think it definitely helped just in terms of going day to day, having some structure in your life and having a routine, and just not only that, but managing money, getting a job, having just that routine, and getting some sort of good study habits around you as well, and just being disciplined around. Like you get given an assignment, it might be due in 6 weeks, don't leave it till the last minute. Like just that simple kind of skills, I guess. So it definitely helped.
Did it also show, because I was talking about it last night with Alex actually, that you know, you got to uni and you might be a reflection of NCA, but you thought that, you know, I did everything in NCA that was enough, and so I know this about this. What I was doing was great, and I got to uni and it was, you know, first 2 tests worth 40%. Here's you got 50% mark, you're screwed.
Yeah.
Did it teach you that you didn't know everything and that you did have to work?
Absolutely. I think as well it depends what you're studying too.
Yeah.
And so with back then I was always played sport like my whole life, swimming and basketball mostly. So I was fascinated by the human body, and still am, and that's why into the low carb, high fat, and the Ironman and that kind of stuff. But back then, you're learning about anatomy and physiology, and you're learning about the biomechanics and the nutrition and that kind of stuff. And what we were learning, I actually found really, really interesting, and still do. So I think it's a lot easier if you find something that you're super, super curious about as well. In contrast, when I then went to uni and studied accounting, it was a bit different. But but so the stuff when I first got to uni had some great discipline and structure and kind of just a good routine and processes to get things done, and was super curious about what I was learning. So it actually made it quite easy to study and to absorb that information because I really enjoyed it. Yeah. And then the accounting transition. The one thing about a degree in sport and exercise science is at the moment you're quite limited with your career options available once you finish that. Yes. So I was going to maybe become a PE teacher, or if you wanted to go in like the personal training route or that kind of route, you don't really have to have a degree. It would certainly help, but it's not really essential. And there are opportunities available, don't get me wrong, but they're very hard. And I guess I kind of wanted that safety and that security around having a career. So I guess a few things, there wasn't one particular thing that sort of led me to change career paths after finishing that degree to accounting, but the business guy that I had worked with at Smith Sports Shoes and understanding or getting to know a lot about his business and how it worked, I found that really, really curious, and how he was able to leverage his time and his money to produce something bigger than that. We had a couple of really good family friends who were both accountants, and knowing how their lifestyles worked and some of the stories that they had sort of told, that was, and also, the safety and security and the career path. And I guess having a set career path as well, that was something that definitely, all of those sort of factors combined really led me to that change to become an accountant,
And what influenced your decision to do it as a degree versus a cadetship?
So I finished my degree, I think, in 2009, and then I, without any accounting or experience, I just went and handed my CVs out to a few accounting firms, and was lucky enough to get a job that started, I remember this was around December, around this time of the year, and got a job the next February. And again, with the chartered accountant path, to be able to do the chartered accountant path, you have to have certain university requirements in the accounting industry to then be able to enroll in the chartered accounting program. So I had to basically go back to uni and work full time and study part time to get those papers. To then become a chartered accountant, and that took from 2010, and I finished the CA in 2014. So it was a long slog of working full time, studying part time, and then doing a few other bits and pieces with the houses and the importing stuff on the side too. So
you just say after the sport and recreation you did that, or after doing accounting?
So I finished the sport and science degree in 2009, got the accounting job in 2010, and then 2010 to 2014 was that study working period.
Right. And so when did the importing stuff start?
That happened as soon as probably the first year of working at Smith Sports Shoes. Again, just going back to the boss buying the shoes for half the cost that he's selling them for. I'm like, hang on, why can't I do this? So back then, websites like Alibaba and AliExpress weren't quite so well known. Again, it's quite it just involved I had a bit of time to Google up how to buy stuff online from China. So I was like, hang on, why can't I do this? So of course, like a 18-year-old or the 19-year-old person, you start with the fake sunglasses and the fake Nikes, and of course, TradeMe closed down your account, and then you go pleading back to them and say, okay, I won't do anything fake, and found like a whole bunch of products that weren't counterfeit items, and started buying them in bulk. Started off with maybe a couple $100 or $300, and that would get me 10 or 20 items, and then sold them individually on TradeMe, and would sort of double up in terms of buy something for $10, sell it for $30. Reinvest the profits back into buying more stock, and did that for probably over 60 or 70 products now. And some of them went really well. Some of the products never turned up. Some of them were the wrong sizes, the wrong colours, the wrong order, and all those little things and problems that you have along the way. Probably some of the most successful ones were the sports compression wear clothing. That happened around like 2011, 2012. So I found a supplier in Pakistan, was landing them for maybe $6 or $7 and selling them for $30 on Grab One, and sell 400 or 500. Or
what was your product for compression?
So it's just the skins, like the compression tights.
Skins.
And then had like the long sleeve ones, the short sleeve ones, the tights, the socks and calf sleeves, and all that kind of stuff too. So that went really well.
Fantastic. And so was that a lesson in personal accounting at the time? Or?
Oh yeah, definitely. And again, like I think I was lucky that I kind of realised early on that if you look at the people who are kind of ahead, they're not selling time for money. I think that's quite easily to like get into that trap of going to work and you're selling your 8 hours a day for X amount of dollars. But as soon as you can leverage that, if that's buying product and selling product, or offering a service maybe based on value, or if you're got staff, or you can leverage other things, I think that's like a real beneficial way to try and like get ahead. So yeah, I think that's one of the key things that I've learned from importing and distributing, and goes back to like I know you're right into the Tim Ferriss principle, and I was lucky. I guess that's how it. One of those other factors that really got me started as well is that my sister gave me the 4-hour work week when I was like 20 or 21 for my birthday, and he talks about creating this muse that you're not selling time for money, you've got that leverage, and then you can do that and create the ultimate lifestyle, live in places like Thailand or Central America and have that kind of lifestyle. And it's pretty cool to sort of pick that up at 21 and then 8 or 9 years later say, oh hey, I've actually done like quite a lot of the stuff and enjoyed it and been through that journey. It's been bloody cool.
Awesome. So were you drop shipping, or were you bringing it to you?
So I tried drop shipping. It worked on Grab One, and it worked really, really well. So one day I ran a Grab One order, sold 400 or 500 products on the Sunday, ordered the stock from the supplier on Monday, paid for it on a credit card, got all the stock and then sent it to the customers, and then by the time I got paid from Grab One, paid off the credit card. So that was probably one of the best deals that I've done, because I think I made quite a lot of money. It didn't really cost me any capital.
You had orders already, right?
I had the orders before I placed the order with my supplier. But in saying that, I've tried it before as well, and it hasn't worked, and I've shot myself in the foot. The key thing is that New Zealand's quite far away from China. Well, not that. You can ship something via DHL overnight, and you can drop ship it that way. But if it's a low value product, which is what I was mostly selling around, sort of that anywhere from sort of $30 to $100 price point, is that someone's not going to pay $30 on top of it to ship it in such a short time. So that's where it kind of lacks practicability in the New Zealand market. But yeah, so I was making orders of $1,000, $5,000, $10,000 at a time, and just had boxes and organised containers in my bedroom.
So obviously an importer's license and things like that.
Well, yeah, surprisingly you don't actually need an importing license for most products. If you have like a understanding of how the customs and GST work, so that obviously when you buy a product for $1,000, you know to add on certain charges that you're going to get charged before you sell it on to your customers, and having understanding what margin you're going to make before you buy the products is quite fundamental.
Nice. More coffee? So I guess what our next sort of establishment questions would be, what was a key characteristic of Tim as 5 years old, and how does that show up today?
I knew you were going to ask me this. So
You prepared
I flicked off a message to my dad and I was like, what was it like at 5?
Yeah.
And he said 1,000,000 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And just no fear of doing anything.
Cool.
He also said I was a bit of a dad's boy, but I think he's just trying to make me appreciate him a bit more. But yeah, not surprising. 1,000,000 miles an hour and no fear. I think quite a lot of those elements still maybe are here today, in terms of just wanting to not necessarily rush things, although I can be quite guilty of doing that at times, but just get stuck into things and just kind of make stuff happen. Really don't like, if you've got an idea, just go out there and implement it or test it out and try it. It's either going to work or it's not. There's not much point in being around the corner trying to think about it, and like you go to all these sort of seminars and events and there's all these people that are like always go to these events and they always read books and they're talking about it, but they're not quite lacking on the action sort of side of things. And I guess like with a few things like the houses, like the importing, like the business and that kind of stuff, I think that's that sort of no fear, and well, there's a little bit more fear of course now, and just taking the action. That's some of the key sort of steps to really get started.
Nice, and that's what Michael Lovegrove was talking about.
Yeah.
That when you're in your 20s, your responsibilities are minimal now.
Yeah.
My responsibilities are quickly turning up, but and some of the Kiwis always yelling at people, how old are you? 20.
Yeah.
Well, eat shit for 10 years,
Yeah.
then, and you'll be better off. You're not going to be backwards, and
definitely.
And I was this morning when you came in, we're listening to Gary Vee talking with Ray Dalio, who's I think he must be 70s or so, and same messages were coming out from Ray, that he's not scared of failure, and any failure he gets, he learns something from. And so in the big picture, he's better off for it. And so,
definitely.
Like I say, you can listen to all these guys, or you can go out and try them yourself. And I think that's one of the keys from Tim Ferriss is experiment, test things, and give them a go.
Yeah, what have you got to lose at the end of the day?
Yeah.
I think there was. I think Tim Ferriss has like that fear setting exercise, doesn't he? And if you actually do that and write it down on like pen to paper, it becomes like a little bit more powerful. Yeah. And like the last 6 months has been like a massive learning curve for me buying into this accounting business and stuff. And then there's been times where like, shit, did I make the right decision? Or like, what could go, like, there's always stuff that can go wrong. But at the end of the day, is it that big to keep you up at night or to focus your attention there as well? So, yeah.
No, and it's definitely a long game. Like even this house, you look at your bank statement and you see all this money disappear straight away, and you think, oh shit, did I do this too early? And then all you've got to think about is 5 years or 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
10 years, my student loan's going to go on. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
50k to go.
Yeah.
Or 55k to go. You will have paid off other things. You'll be in a better position.
Yeah.
Your likely earning potential will have grown, hopefully quite a lot. You'll hopefully be more diversified, and especially if you're putting in place things to increase that opportunity, then you've got to do it. Whereas if you play it safe, like you say, leverage your time for money, well then that's the only value that you're going to get is your time. Whereas if you can leverage your money for time or other people's time, then you're going to
And it's a bit like as well if that and if people have a business or if they consider like themselves as a business, there's that key like fundamental difference between working in the business and working on the business. So like working in the business would be the day-to-day tasks such as for me as an accountant, processing accounts, preparing cash flow statements, talking with clients and helping them out. But then there's also that working on the business, and that's looking at other opportunities or the marketing or the publishing or the growth side of things as well. That isn't necessarily going to happen by itself to be able to get to that next level of where you want to go. And I think that's what like a fundamental difference that people can invest like more time into that sort of things as well and get started. Yeah.
And I used to have a couple of family friends who are accountants.
Yeah.
Accountants get a bad rap for being straight and narrow numbers people, and Alex says, "Oh man, he's an accountant," but Fully interesting person and been involved with a number of interesting things from Villa Maria to RX to now with the trucking company. It's diverse and you get a whole bunch of stories. What were sort of some of the stories of these people that told you that sort of thought, well, maybe this isn't just about numbers and punching cards?
Well, it's more about relationships, to be honest. And that's something that, again, I've really learnt in the past 6 months myself now as a partner. Going back the first year that you're an accountant, you can't really, it sounds a bit silly, but you can't tell the difference between $10 and $1 million because you're going through this process. But yeah, it's more about like the relationships and the people that you meet and being able to have being able to have an effect on what they're doing, and they're really, really good at running their businesses, and some of the growth that some of our clients have had is fantastic. But then it's been absolutely awesome to be able to just make, what about doing this, or how about doing this, or just changing a structure for, or just doing something for that pays off down the long run, or set up something for asset protection or something like that. That's where the real reward comes in. So going back to some of those family friends, just some of their lifestyles they live as well, I guess. It's pretty cool. One of the other things I like is that you get to sit down on your bum all day in an office and work. It's not like you're out there. I remember in between leaving the Navy around November and then going to uni in March for the first time, I worked as a labourer.
Yes.
And I was on a rake shoveling concrete at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I think that was like and you'd be out like stinking hot day, like commercial building, and you come home and I'd just be wrecked. And I was like, man, I don't want to do this. So it was like just the fact as well that you could sit in an air conditioning office, and I guess that comes back to Ironman as well in terms of like being able to train before and after work and having the energy to do that because you're not physically involved in your job. So yeah, just a few things like that all sort of factor in together.
People that like Tim and Joe Rogan have interviewed, and Joe Rogan himself says about like the shit jobs he did when he was younger to make you appreciate things. And I think my mum was quite happy for me to be a labourer or work at the freezing works or
gives you that appreciation.
During uni, my dad worked at the aluminium smelter down south, and so we were lucky enough to have summer job there. But my job consisted of walking along a cat track that was about 90 degrees and sweeping dust. So, it paid off, although at uni you're always broke. But definitely makes you appreciate air conditioning and having time before and after work, and energy before and after work. The name of your business is AgBiz, is it?
AgBiz, AgBiz,
And so, that probably gives, being in Cambridge, the perception that you're working in the agricultural sector.
Not just the agricultural sector. We do have quite a big sort of farming clientele, but we also work with a lot of small, medium businesses too, which is probably more my side of the coin. And enjoy that. And just recently we've obviously with the big sort of publicity around Bitcoin and that kind of thing as well. We've even had people coming to asking for us advice around that and accounting and tax for that. So definitely not just limited to some of that.
If you want to, can you touch on why that it's about being an accountant first, and you were quoted the other day in the paper, and you put up on Facebook a really good statement that everybody's risk is different, everybody's knowledge, and you could say you could dabble in Bitcoin, but that doesn't necessarily make you an expert. There's people that mine it, or people that have been looking at this for years and years and years. You can touch on that.
Well, I think it was Mike talking about the 10,000 hour rule on your last podcast, and just how it basically takes 10,000 hours to be an expert in the industry. But quite often when we see things in a situation such as Bitcoin, everyone thinks that they can buy something because it does really well. They think they're kind of an expert in the industry. Or another classic example is you'll see a person do really well on one particular diet, and all of a sudden they think they're an expert in the health and fitness sort of field. And I think there's just that misconception because someone does well in something means they're an expert in it, and I don't think that's the case always. There's some situations where you can learn, but I guess that's just a bit of risk adverse and a bit of a warning out there that, hey, who knows what's going to happen, especially with cryptocurrencies in this environment. There's a lot of people making a hell of a lot of money, but is that the right thing for you to do? It really depends on your situations and personal circumstances. And just a bit of a disclaimer there that everyone needs to get their own investment and financial advice because it's so different and it's such a crazy market. Yeah. And we haven't seen anything else like this ever before. It's super exciting, don't get me wrong. Like some of the stuff that I've learned, again, just in the last sort of 4 months from being involved in it's been massive. But is it here to stick around? Bugger, I know. Yeah. Is it going to be a medium of exchange? I don't know the answers, but I know the tax and accounting side of it really well. But as far as all these different, what do you think about buying X coin or Y coin? I'm not the right person to ask. Get some investment and financial advice around that. Yeah.
And what's the support that you think you guys might take?
Well, like things around asset protection, things around tax structures. What exactly is your tax liability if you buy something? How is it different between different types of activities if you're trading it, if you're buying it? So just being aware on that sort of thing, and planning for it really, and saying if X happens, this is the tax result from what that is, or if Y happens, this is the tax result from Y. We're in a little bit of an unusual situation because it hasn't really happened before, and it is something that's new and it's constantly changing. And we're seeing in the crypto space anyway, we're seeing different elements of different coins. So Bitcoin doesn't produce you any income, and there's no actual value from holding it. So therefore, without getting too complicated, like IRD's default position is that if you buy it with the intention to hold it, it's for ultimately disposing it. So therefore, it's taxable regardless of
year on year.
No, when you sell it. But as opposed to some of the other coins that have some sort of voting right or some sort of income-producing element of them, they could be treated differently from a tax perspective. So I guess it's about sitting down with an individual and asking them, hey, look, what are you doing here? Why are you doing it? Are you aware of the tax obligations? If not, this is how we can help. This is what you need to plan for, and maybe just structure things accordingly.
And is it the fact that at the moment it's quite global? Is that making things more complicated?
Yeah. So or from an accounting perspective, So it's not classified as money, whereas in Australia they've announced that it will be classified as money. So there's a whole bunch of different legislations around it, and it's exciting and it's new and it's constantly changing. But I've never seen anything. I think the only other thing that I can think of is Xero shares in 2000. Xero is an accounting software company, and they listed on the NZX for $1 in 2007, and their shares are now worth $30. They did peak at around 48, but they've came back down to 30. So if you bought $1,000 worth in 2007, you would have made a lot of money by now. But that's going from $1 to 30. Bitcoin's gone from $1 US, or not even a dollar, maybe like 40 cents US to, I think the other day it was 19,000 US. It's just phenomenal. And I guess that's why it's created such this big media hype and bubble attention, because there's a lot of people making money about it, but is that the right thing for you? Is it going to continue? You can lose it all tomorrow.
And I saw on somebody's LinkedIn yesterday that a good chunk, which I think is worth about 16.8 billion, got hacked. Or hacked. They're trying to find it. The encryption obviously is designed to be quite unbreakable, and everybody, the people that mine it have the keys, and there's a ledger on exchange. But similarly, there's smart people out there. Someone's obviously.
I think in that, I could be wrong here, but I think all that money that got hacked was on a public exchange. It wasn't held in a private wallet, which would have had an encryption key. So I think that's what happened, but it still doesn't change the fact that it was stolen. And
and like I say, there's some people making some big money. Saw an article of a dude in Australia. I think he's a billionaire on paper now. And so you're saying now in Australia it's classed as money
from the 1st of July next year.
1st of July next year, and you're a billionaire on paper. What does that mean?
Well, I guess it's no different from being a billionaire on paper if you hold other investments.
Yeah.
So, like, frequently you'll see a share portfolio, and that share portfolio might be worth $20 million, and they might have $1 million of shares in Fletcher Building, $1 million of shares in all these different countries, all these different companies.
Mm-hmm.
Some might be in New Zealand, some might be overseas. But so it's not real different, or you might have $1 million in the property market or something like that. So it's no real different from other investments, really. The taxation treatment is obviously different, and how it's stored is different, and how it's recognised and traded is obviously different, and that's quite unique based on different segments of what investment category, whether that's shares, bonds, property, etc. But as far as the wealth on paper, as we move to this digital world where everyone has bank accounts, and my debt's all in bank accounts, it's owed to the bank, and it's all on electronic. It's not really that different in terms of what $1 billion looks like.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And so, again, is this something where he's going to be year on year reassess his value
on a daily value maybe, because I think the other day it went from 19,000 US down to 15,000 US in the space of 5 or 6 hours, or maybe even minutes. So imagine having 25% of your wealth wiped out in 4 hours. That's what it means. It comes back down to that individual based on what are their own personal circumstances, what are their risk levels like, and all that kind of stuff as well, because who knows what's going to happen. And coming, like you mentioned before, with that Ray Dalio, who's the investment guru, like we always hear about diversification and that kind of stuff, and I don't believe that this is any different from having your eggs in different baskets and that kind of thing.
Nice. So, with the exception of cryptocurrencies, because I'm sure when we all first hear over here, what the hell is this? Anything else that you've been changing your mind about in the last year or so?
About sugar. Yeah. And just how it's bad, and just how carbs are really bad as well. There was a really interesting book I read about the grain brain.
Yes.
And just how that processed carbohydrates have a much more effect on dementia and Alzheimer's, especially later in life. It still doesn't change the fact that there's a bakery on the corner from work, and it's very, very tempting to go there for a 2 o'clock snack.
And the pie is always good.
and like the weird thing, the thing that I struggle with is that you read this stuff and you know that, okay, this is quite convincing in this situation, that carbs are bad and such. But then you see a bit of chocolate cake and your brain just plays a different trick on you, and you know it's going to taste good for a short instant period of time. Yeah. So I struggle with that. But that's one thing that I've definitely changed my mind about. That I think like all processed foods are absolute crap for you. I still eat them because they taste pretty good. Yeah. But I'm convinced that they're bad for you.
Mm-hmm. Do you have something motivating you forward into that area?
No, I think that would help if I did. Yeah. And I remember going back to the Ironman, the low carb, high fat. When I was doing Ironman, it was quite easy to cut out all of that stuff because you could really dial in on your body in terms of how you felt when you woke up, because you were like a finely tuned machine, whereas now I'm not. Since I've put on probably about 10 kg since March. But yeah, if you have some sort of goal, I guess, or some sort of intrinsic drive or some sort of motivation to do that, would be a lot easier. But I'm pretty happy with my weight and that kind of thing at the moment, so it's not like I need to do anything rather than just kind of protect those sorts of long-term disease which makes it incredibly hard in the short term for that instant gratification sort of thing, eh? Yeah. But yeah, that's one thing I've changed my mind about.
And so now you're no longer doing the Ironman. What does your first hour sort of look like now?
The first hour of my day? I'm quite inconsistent. I try to be consistent, but quite often it's not as structured as, like, you can't win every single day or every single morning. But hopefully maybe at least 3 out of 5 days or during the work week, or hopefully 4, normally up around 6 or 6:30. I'll go to the bathroom and then I'll use Headspace for 15 minutes, which I find absolutely fascinating. You don't notice it at the time, but you just has this calming kind of effect over the course of the day. I don't know how to describe it, but...
and is that transcendental?
No, I don't think it is.
Right.
I've heard about that.
Yeah. So that's a mantra after a meaningless.
Yeah, and I just do the one that you focus on the breath.
Okay, yeah.
And like 15 minutes, it's not that much, but I think the benefits are there, like throughout the day. Of course, your mind plays tricks on you, and sometimes you're doing it and you're running through like your to-do list or something on your mind or something like that. But I think that's the whole process of doing it right.
And hey, again, anecdote, but the process of bringing yourself back to the focus and recognise when you're going away is good practice.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
So after that, I've got this little park around the corner of my house that I'll go and do 100 burpees and 50 chin-ups.
Nice.
Or if I don't do that, I'll try and do that twice a week. Or I'll cook breakfast, just have some scrambled eggs with cheese and butter,
nice.
Some bacon maybe if it's floating around, and then clean up and then jump into a shower. And now that I've only just started this probably in the last 2 weeks, but I have a cold shower for about 4 minutes. Brush my teeth in the shower, so it takes my mind off the cold. And then get changed and off the door to work, and then try and get to work maybe just around 8 or just before 8, before the phone starts ringing at 8:39, and just try and have like a clear to-do list and try and tick off like the number one thing to do before before the phone starts ringing, or there's interruptions or staff training or just general sort of interruptions.
How many people were you working with at work?
So there's myself, Jane, who's absolutely fantastic, who learned so much off, and then we've got one full-time accountant, and then we've got sort of a part accountant, part receptionist.
And so it's a small team. It must keep you quite dynamic and easy to relate to each other and be there on a personal level. Do you find?
Oh, it's been a challenge. Not so much from the relationship perspective, but more from the trainee perspective. I guess it's easier as an employee because you're not necessarily, you're focused on the work that you're doing to the best of your ability, but as soon as you step up into that sort of leadership role, the whole focus changed towards the team. And one of the challenges that I've really had to really think about, and I still struggle with this and I'm still learning so much, is that the more time that you can invest into the staff and teach them how to do things, especially we've got one staff member who's in their 60s, and we've just transitioned them from an old accounting software program to Xero, and the change has just been phenomenal. It's been massive. So obviously you've got a 60-year-old lady, and she's absolutely learnt so much. She's one of the best accountants I've worked with, but trying to learn the new software has obviously been quite difficult, just in terms of figuring things out that we wouldn't think about. Just things like opening stuff up in a new tab on Google Chrome, or just some sort of efficiencies. So really having to take time out of my day where I've got heaps to do and spend time with her, that's one of the key things that I'm trying to really focus on, and not treat it as, oh no, another interruption, but oh hey, look, if we sort this out, this is actually going to help the team and really improve our efficiencies. And then again with our part-timer, our part receptionist, part accountant, she joined us in April, and having her join the team's been wicked. Like, it's been awesome. But again, as we start to feed her more accounting work, again, that's that staff training process behind it as well. And yeah, it's a new thing for me to go through and to train someone else, but at the same time, it's also an opportunity to get some practice at it. So yeah, that's us sort of on a team basis. But then at the same time, I remember when I was a junior accountant, constantly interrupting, how do I do this? How do I do this? So this came back around full circle almost. But as far as like the dynamics, we had our Christmas party last night, had a few beers and wines and a barbecue, and we've got like a really nice family vibe. And we actually did like a strengths training. We got a lady, Tracy Olivia, in to come in and fill in like a strengths questionnaire. And we kind of all complement each other in different skills across the board really, really well. And I think that's part of the reason why Jane and I work really well together. And I worked with her for 7 or 8 years before I went away, and then came back and worked for her, and now in business with her. We have our moments, as people do, but we complement each other really well, and just have a really good relationship and trust, and it works. awesome team.
Awesome. And how do you balance your work with the work of the mission of the company?
It just happens.
Is that
We know that we've got X amount of clients, and they've all got different needs in terms of different levels of tax exposure, different levels of stages of their business. We've got some large dairy farmers that are going through succession. We've got some people who are growing and buying new businesses or add-ons. We've got some with really big cash flow constraints and some that have surplus cash looking to invest. So we've really got a really dynamic range of clients, and just sort of understanding how to prioritise them and what their needs are and how they are as people. Some clients just want the peace of mind and to know that everything's taken care of, and they don't want to understand the detail, whereas other people want to know exactly where their money's going, understand exactly the detail and why. So again, just it comes back down to that. We're in the business really of relationships and just understanding what make people tick and how we can help them the most and really give them the most benefit. That's what it really comes down to, rather than just saying, I need to do this, I need to do this. It's really understanding the full picture. Yeah.
You touched on a key point there with relationships and in succession. There's you see in the rural atmosphere that it can tear families apart, and there's a sort of, I don't know if you call it high profile, but something that's been exposed down in South Canterbury. A son has taken over a farm. The other two off-farm family members, both been given $1 million each, and one's also been given a family holiday home, and she's taken the family to court over a lack of fairness. And thankfully for the person who's bought the farm and paid out the siblings, the case was thrown out. But when I was out at the Next Generation Dairy Farmers Conference, we had a whole session on succession. One of the key factors was everybody being heard and creating open discussion and relationships around it. Is it quite a tense time and tense discussion, or is it part of your job?
Great question. Everyone's circumstances are different, and there's no right or wrong way how to do it. And it really comes back down to, like, I was in a discussion just last week. It wasn't actually a dairy farm or a succession. It was just a trust making a distribution to the beneficiaries. And the key question is should it be fair and equitable, even though that's what they originally set up the trust to do, but one beneficiary needed it more than the other. So it's like, hang on, okay, what do you guys actually want? And we see this situation probably more and more where people have, especially in later life, people have accumulated this wealth, and it's all on paper, and they're at the point that, okay, what should we do with it? It's like, okay, do we gift it all off to the trust? And then it's like, well, hang on, don't you want to be able to take out $20,000 and go on an overseas holidays? As far as the tension and that kind of stuff, Jane's definitely a lot more involved in that farm succession planning side of things than me. She's working for a few at the moment, and they're not something that happens overnight as well. There's one that we've been working on for probably 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
That's been constantly changing and that kind of thing as well, because they're so big. They're big from obviously from the land perspective as well. You might be talking about a $20 million farm. But also from a tax perspective as well, in terms of depreciation recovered, or in terms of transferring livestock at different values or herd schemes. How you structure debt remittance income. There's a lot of different scenarios that can play out, and a lot of big factor ideas that you need to factor in for 5, 10, 15 years down the track. And again, you might have the situation where it's an intergenerational farm, but then one of the siblings is in a relationship, one's not. So again, there's multi different layers of it as well. And with tax is only one, normally the least important sort of aspect in these kind of succession situations. So it's really on a case-by-case basis. And of course, some people don't want to have a farm as well.
No.
Or none of the kids want to have a farm. So it really depends. And you say about these different structures, and what's the most benefit from a tax perspective for them? You've also got the investment of time, investment of labour, and investment of capital. And
all-encompassing of that is somebody's home and somebody's upbringing.
Yeah.
You know.
And like it's a bit like when you buy your first house, as
Yeah.
you know, you kind of get involved in that emotional sort of decision, and it's very, very hard to leave that on the table when you step out and go to a negotiation or something if you know you want it.
Yeah.
Even if the numbers don't stack up, you're like, I still want it. And of course, like I've been guilty of buying houses that haven't quite stacked up, but still gone ahead with them. And yeah, it happens more often than not that we see it quite often. More in the situation where people will bring you a proposal of a business to have a look at and thinking about buying it. And you can kind of tell in their mind that they've already imagined what it would look like if I had this business and what I own it, and I'd turn around and, to be honest, a lot of the businesses that we see, there's probably only about 20% that will actually say, okay, let's have a sit down and look at it a little bit further, because quite a few of them, there's no actual substance to the business, or they're overpriced or something like that. But you can tell that the people get so hyped up, and which is cool, because I get excited. I get really excited, and probably do this exactly the same, but you imagine yourself what it's going to be like when you're there, and without, just purely from an emotional perspective, without taking a step back and looking at it from the actual realistic numbers and that kind of perspective.
Absolutely, and that's what I'm sort of beginning to play with. There's a farm down at Arthur's Pass, which I knew, I'd never have the money for that, but what's the first questions to ask, and luckily last year I built a relationship with somebody that's in agriculture banking, and he came back to me and said, well, these are your first three questions to ask.
What were they?
Yeah.
Put you on the spot.
Well, it was what it's currently run as, what's the stocking rate of it, and I can't remember what the third one is. It's in an email.
Yeah.
And so basically from then you can go through a whole viability process and say, my ultimate dream is for a deer farm. There's a destination farm.
Yep.
Eventually would have a restaurant.
And then with Alex, it's going to be quite ironic actually. They have a yoga studio with a venison belt producing farm.
Have you had it like organic or just something slightly niche?
By dynamic soil.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Massive demand for that.
Yeah, so like I said, there's your emotional picture to it. And, stock's expensive. You've got to have, bank managers have said you've got to have sort of at least 40% investment and ideally 50%, and then you're talking in millions. And so,
you did right. And then we're seeing the situation in farming specifically, where, well, not only farming, but just in any type of businesses.
I think the third thing was what the current capital expenditure and what needs doing.
Whereas like the farm has bought the neighbour's farm, and just the farms are getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
So for like Joe Bloggs, who just wants to, maybe is contracting milking, going share milking, who then wants to buy a farm, like that's the typical progression. So those really small farms are becoming harder and harder to get because the neighbours are buying them. So I think at some point we're going to reach like that critical mass where there's not going to be any small little farms because all the big players are just...
Yeah, I'm just seeing farms with sort of 10, 20 titles on them.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and as the values increase, then it's just leverage against the next one and leverage against the next one.
Yeah.
Which is how people build a property portfolio and that kind of thing as well.
So we chat for a good amount of time. Where can people find Tim?
Where can people find me? Probably Facebook's probably best, just Tim Doyle, or flick me an email at tim@agbizaccountants.co.nz, so AgBiz Accountants.co.nz.
So I'll look that in, and final thing, what would you leave people with? Probably in our age group, something that, I don't know, might be they could implement or change the thinking around.
Probably a couple of things. One, just get started.
Yeah.
Like, you've got absolutely nothing to lose and everything to gain. Just get started. There's no real need to read that extra book or go to that extra seminar. Just get stuck in and learn along the way. Like, that's the funnest part. The journey is really, it's awesome. It's such an awesome journey, and I'm still on it and absolutely love it. So yeah, just get started. And the other thing is just you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with who surround you, and that's just so true. And I remember hearing about that a few years ago now, and you really notice it when you change the environment that you're around, especially for me traveling in the past, not so much in the past 18 months, but before that, when you're around people that you're traveling, you get stuck into that environment. If you're around people who are sporty and doing the Ironman, you're around that environment. And then if you're around business, and so yeah, just choose the 5 people that you spend your most time with. Have a really good think about that.
Awesome, mate. Well, enjoy the mount.
Yeah.
And, thanks
man.
very much for coming on board. It was
Yeah.
awesome. You're a bit nervous to begin with. Absolute gems, bro. Thanks so much.
So, cheers, man.
Cheers.